Living in the digital age can be challenging for all of us. Trying to keep up with the ever-evolving pace of technology can be daunting for those of us who grew up as the first-generation digital pioneers. But in the process of trying to keep up, we neglected to consider what it's like to grow up in this online environment. Our kids, these digital natives, have never known anything else. Have you ever thought about what it would be like trying to navigate this world and technology without any frame of reference of what life was like without it? It may not be as easy as we think, or as natural as we take for granted. And bridging that gap can be the most difficult of all. Brent Basham sought to do just that with his podcast, Digital Dads. He and co-host Andrew Currie use the podcast to explore topics all dads face and often struggle with, while simultaneously providing a platform for his kids to find their own voice and cover topics that all dads can benefit from. The Digital Dads podcast experienced some real success. But as the podcast ran its course, the Digital Dads struggled to keep up with the constant demand of booking new interviews. Keeping the show relevant with fresh talent became a constant challenge. This need for high-caliber guests continues to be a common thread in the podcasting industry. Brent identified this need, and joining forces with the right friends at the right time, Poddit was born. Poddit is a free guest concierge service, providing podcasters with a reputable source for quality interviews at the touch of a button. It also provides a consistent stream of popular interviewers for authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders with a message to share. This Kennesaw State grad is providing the tools and the talent for podcasters and YouTubers around the globe. Learn how it all came to be and where it's headed from here in my compelling conversation with Brent Basham. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Brent Basham.
What's up, man? How are you?
Great, dude. How are you?
No, this is blast.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you, man. We were already getting going before I hit record. I'm like, we got to just hit record and get this thing started, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Just doing a little podcast recording. I've been off mic for a while, so it's good. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, getting the rust out, right? Well, how's rainy Alpharetta treating you this evening?
Yeah. I feel like some days we're still living in Seattle or something around here, man. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, all the aftermath of these little hurricanes that keep coming through just keep us perpetually wet for this whole month, it seems like. But we're in the same boat over here. But it's cool that we're relatively close together. We're not in person, but we're getting close to that point. So that's always exciting. Yeah. So for those who don't know about Poddit, I want to make sure that we kick off our conversation talking about the hosting platform the interview. How would you describe your site? What was the best way to say that?
Probably an interview connection platform.
Interview connection platform. Yeah. Excellent way to call it.
Way to connect podcasts and guests. It could, you could actually, we've got some live streamers on there too, though. So I hesitate to just say podcast. Anybody that wants to connect for interviews, that's what we do.
Yeah. And we actually first connected, just like so many of my recent buddies, down at Podfest.
That's right.
We were all sitting at that one big table, all kind of just hanging out. And we were talking about
Fun
your Gary
times.
V shoes. Do you remember that?
Right? Yeah, I do, man. I love them. The one time I got to wear them in public before COVID kind of took over.
Right. Yeah. These brand new fresh kicks, and then don't even get to show them off, man. Yep. That's crazy. So tell folks about Poddit and how all that got started.
You want the long version or the short version? Because really,
this is long format, so we got all night.
Okay. So I was a podcaster. I mean, actually, I guess I should say I was a dad, and still am a dad, as a matter of fact. But I was a dad, and had 3 kids, and went back to school away from restaurant management to get into technology because I always kind of liked it, and I thought, well, I should probably go pursue this because it's better situation than working nights and weekends all the time, which I was doing in the restaurant. And so I went back to school much later in life and met up with a buddy. I actually became friends with a guy that was also back at school. He's a little bit younger than me, but still older than most of the kids in college.
Than
right?
your typical college.
Yeah. So we naturally hit it off because we're like the old guys in the classroom or whatever. And
Nice.
and we were back there for computer science, and which is basically computer programming, right?
Yeah.
And so
shout out to Kennesaw State, right?
Kennesaw State. That's right. That's where we went back. That's where we went back to. Yeah, and great professors up there. Really loved the experience. Got a good chance. Now, when I came out, I actually started doing a lot of more technology / sales related roles. But I met my friend Andrew there, and we actually ended up working together. And he had a daughter, and he was a single. Well, he was divorced, and he had a really good co-parenting situation, but it still has its challenges, right?
Living the dad life, though, for sure.
Yeah, for real. And so we were bonding over that. We both loved like pop culture. We both definitely had a nerd side to us and stuff. And so we became friends, and then we found ourselves working together, and we were coming into work every day, and we're having all these conversations about, we are the very last what they call digital immigrants, right? We remember not being technology, and now we have it.
We knew what life was like before the internet.
Yeah, I remember Nintendo coming out. I remember Atari 2600. I remember not being connected and riding my bike all day. And you know what I mean? We used to ride the bike to the gas station to play Super Mario. That was a different world, right?
The arcades. Dude,
it's different. And now it's like the kids are always connected. So we were the very last digital immigrants raising the very first digital natives. My kids have always been connected, and every generation probably from now on, presumably, will always be connected. Sure. So it was like a really interesting point in time that would never happen again. And we're like, there's a lot of interesting challenges. There's a lot of really cool aspects of this. We want to, there's like cyberbullying, there's social media, there's, video games. There's just all these different kinds of things that are getting to impact their life. So let's go do a podcast about this, right? We're having these talks, and like, let's just do a podcast because that's what a couple of nerdy guys do.
That's what we do, right?
We didn't know what the heck that would mean. We didn't have a clue. We went and grabbed a mic, started talking on it. Really, really bad at it, Nate. I don't know if you had this experience, but really, really bad. And I think the biggest reason why we're really, really bad is when you first start doing a podcast, and you can maybe relate to this, you're trying to be a thing rather than just being you. Right. And so you have
this
trying
to present.
You are right. And I think whenever the magic does happen, if it's going to happen, it's going to be because you find that authentic voice, that part of you that connects with other human beings. And that's kind of tough at first. The microphone was intimidating, all of it. It was really, really bad. So we did that for a little while.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah,
dude, sure. I think most podcasters can if they're being honest, right?
Right.
But we did that for a few episodes, and we realized, we're getting, crickets. We're getting like 8, 10, 15 downloads an episode, whatever. It's back in 2014. And so then we're like, you know what? We're going to stop trying to be this thing. And Star Wars was coming out. That they rebooted Star Wars. Or no, they continued it again, right? And the new movie came out with Rey and all that. And so we're like, we're going to go watch Star Wars, and we're going to do an episode about it because it's our show. Nobody's listening. Who cares?
Yeah.
But one thing we did there was I just flipped on the mic, and I was like, let me just record my kids, right? And they recorded, and we cut up the clips, and it was pretty fun. We thought it was cool. And then we said, well, what if we took and we recorded the kids about a topic, put that at the beginning, and then we talk about it, so we get their perspective on it. And it was really powerful. Like,
it kind of provides a narrative.
Yeah, like, do you think Dad is on his phone too much, right? And get their feedback. And then we talked about it, and it was really cool. Well, it was interesting because Steve Wilson at Apple Podcasts found us, put us in the parenting category on the front page of iTunes for a while.
Wow!
Like when you go on iTunes, there was like these little blocks of
it's like free advertising. Yeah,
we're like right there. Yeah,
on the front page.
Dude, it was like, wait,
that's
what?
Amazing.
How do we, and then we started getting into. I'll connect the dots for you, I promise. And we started getting into podcast guesting. And we really started because we realized we weren't experts at this stuff. We knew some stuff about tech, but we didn't really know. We didn't have the best models of parenting that maybe we could have. And even if we did, there's still a lot to learn. So we started bringing on experts.
And we're all fumbling our way through parenting. I mean, if we're being honest, once again, right?
The truth. And so one of the things I started to really love was getting guests on the show. And the audience was like, you and Andrew don't present yourself to be like pros at this stuff. Y'all don't have this attitude. You're just bringing on a guest, asking questions we would ask, and you're learning. And we feel like we're right there with you in the room. And that's really cool. And so we really loved that. But what started to happen, and I'm sure you can probably relate to this too, it took a lot of time to find and coordinate and all this stuff around the guests. It was like the podcast itself took a while and effort, right? And promoting and all this stuff. But then now you had this extra layer. And I got to the point where we were just sort of taking whatever guests we could more toward the end sometimes. I mean, some of them were still fantastic, but I wasn't kind of steering that ship as much as I wanted to.
Right.
And so we push pause around the holidays one year because I realized, I'm talking about being a great dad, and this is taking a lot of my dad time for my kids, and I can't do that. I can't justify that. And so we pushed pause. We had, frankly, and this isn't a big number, but to me it was a big number. We had like about close to 2,000 listeners at that point. And so it was a little tough. I say that because it was a little tough to walk away. We had people that were really,
I mean, that's a legitimate audience. I mean, yeah, you had people that were showing up,
Yeah, and week after week, and in a Facebook group and all that stuff. And so you're going, hey, we're gonna stop, and it's like, ooh, wow, that's like kind of, it mattered to them. And I guess looking back, I'm glad it mattered to them because it means what we're doing was worth something. And but it's, again, most of the time, I mean, we dabbled with like Patreon, and we had like a couple of sponsors on our show with like a children's book, and for some reason, Mack Weldon men's boxers, which that was a complete mismatch. But, but we never got more than like $50 an episode or something. And it was just like,
it wasn't paying the bills by any means.
It just wasn't going to do it. You know what I mean? And I love doing it. And it's an amazing time capsule for me. Oh my gosh. So episode number 11, I'm brand new podcaster. My son's 10 years old. He wants to watch Dumb and Dumber #2. He's seen the tuxedos and the full bit, and he's heard me and his mom talking about it. And he comes off the bus one day and he's like, I heard you and mom talking the other day, and we're playing basketball. You can hear it. We're playing basketball. He's like, I heard you and mom talking, and I want to watch Dumb and Dumber, but I heard you say we have to have the talk first. What's the talk? Okay. He's my oldest. I had never had this experience before, and I was like, oh man, this is heavy. Let me go grab my microphone. So I did. Yeah. All right. Because of course, even though dumb, but anyways, so I grabbed my mic, recorded me and him, recorded me telling my wife, went and recorded me and my dad about him giving me the talk, which took a weird turn, and then recorded the actual talk. And then my wife explaining why she had a bit of wine, and then we spliced it together NPR style as I guided my co-host through my experience with this thing. It was the biggest, most amazing effort I've ever done in my life for podcasting, but what a cool thing now to have in like our family.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like a little scrapbook thing, it's like we all back in the day, like, again, coming from the pre-digital generation, we had those scrapbooks, those baby books as a kid, with all their pictures in them or whatnot. Well, you just created your own little digital audio version of that.
It's amazing how much the kids sound different too. Like, it's just so cool. I mean, we got some videos of them, but it's different when it's like a produced podcast. But anyway, so yeah, that was really near and dear to my heart, man, in a lot of ways, because we got vulnerable on there. We talked about a lot of stuff on there that we felt like was going to be beneficial to the dads out there, and we really tried to pull it back.
And it was, without question,
as much as we could. So we did that, and then we pod faded, which is basically you push pause and you never end up going back. Because, man, once you get off that horse, I think you said you've been off of it, it's hard to kind of get back in that rhythm of doing it regularly.
And we're going to go down that wormhole later on. But
and so about I still, but during that time I went to Podcast Movement PM15 actually. So I went to Joe Pardo's little event at a high school gymnasium. We met on Facebook, and he had this tiny little event before MapCon kind of grew up a little bit, and we met. Anyway, I started getting connected in the community a little bit, and I had some friends, and I stayed friends. So a couple years later from that, we started, we always had that pain point of like the guest side.
Getting
and I was
the
like,
guests booked. Finding good quality guests.
It's just not solved the way I would want to solve it with my tech background and sort of knowing the pain points like I do and what I experience. And it's not there yet. And quite frankly, that's where Poddit came from. And we have not delivered on what I have in mind yet. We're moving that way. It's getting exciting right now. But yeah, it's really been, how do I help with that whole end-to-end problem of discovering, coordinating, scheduling, you know what I mean? All those different touch points, except in the interview, you know, back and forth. I would go through all these email threads and I would try to find, well, where did I know that person told me this, but where in the thread is it, et cetera, you know, a lot of back and forth. And so that's what we set out to solve with Poddit. So I know that was like probably the most long-winded way of telling you what Poddit was ever.
You don't know how hard it was as the podcast host to not dive onto each one of these little tidbits you're throwing at me, man. I want to grab all of them, especially you talked about episode 11 and how incredibly what impressed me right out of the gate was the post-production side of it. Like, forget about all the cool stuff that you guys talked about and all the cool aspects that you present as a dad in a way to deal with a stressful and technical issue and all that kind of stuff. But just all that aside, that episode, along with all the others, the production work that goes into all of that, holy cow, I couldn't imagine how much time and effort it took to put all that together.
Well, I was a cheat a little bit because my co-host did all the editing, but
I mean, there's no way that really, honestly, that one person could have done all that work at one. There's just no way.
No, but I'll tell you, I came away with a huge respect for those type of shows because we were amateurs trying to do it. But Nate, we were like, I mean, never mind the actual stitching together of the audio and cutting all the clips up. You have to listen to so much tape to figure out how to create this narrative and how does this make some cohesive. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
You almost need like a Trello, like Venn flow diagram kind of thing to literally lay it all out. I mean, that's the only way that I could think of how like you would manage, or that, or just a big giant whiteboard, you know?
And you're having to write down times on all the clips and everything.
I mean, you pretty much have to have it memorized at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I think it came out pretty well. We've had some compliments on it, but man, yeah, I wouldn't.
Right out of the gate,
I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't do it again. I mean, just because of the effort. You know what I mean?
That's not sustainable.
No, that's why there's one episode. That's why there's the rest of them are not like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was amazing though. And like you said, the cool time capsule that you created, that was really cool. So speaking of that same kind of Venn flow diagram, so with what I'm trying to do in my process, not only with the podcast, but I've also got my 8 keys to great, and I'm trying to lay out this systematic program that's got so many different steps in it. And I'm trying to build a platform that supports that. And so one of the things I'm realizing that's so incredibly difficult is laying it all out, getting it, understanding all the flow and all the different pieces of that puzzle. So with Poddit, when you guys were trying to put your website together, being that you're software guys, what does that process look like for you?
So software guys, yes. So my co-host Andrew, he'd done some web stuff, right? He'd done some web development, web design. I hadn't touched code in a while, so I was really more helping a lot with the product creation, so sort of like identifying what the pain point is and trying to translate it into an actual product. And then I was doing a lot of the outreach and all that kind of stuff and trying to build the community and Facebook, etc. So and we brought on another developer and another designer, or an actual designer.
So what does the product side of it look like then? Like how you're trying to lay out the, like what that's gonna look like?
Well, at the beginning it was like a lot of paper and pencil and paper, but now I've moved on to where I've a little bit of skills with like wireframing, which is basically like a piece of software that you can just drag and drop different elements, and you can kind of like, what you're basically doing is laying out the screens. But it's more than that, because you'll hear the terms UI, UX, and UI is user interface, which is what you see on the screen. UX is user experience. And really they kind of go hand in hand, but what you're really trying to do is, if you do really good at it, people don't really notice it. They just think it works really well flows. And it's easy and it makes sense, right? But to get there is really hard. And then once you create a thing and then you want to change the thing, that there's always like side effects, and it's a behemoth. And it was like 4 guys doing this, and we talked about round jobs and stuff. And so but we felt like the problem needed to be solved, and we felt like we could do it. It took us a bit longer. We didn't get out, we got out the beta. We were probably working on it around that for about 2 years before we launched the beta. And we launched the beta September of 2019. So when we met up in Podfest, it had been out for some months. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was,
yeah.
well, just what it's done in from that. I mean, what was that, March to
Yeah.
now? I mean,
Yeah.
holy cow, right? Like, despite COVID, or maybe because of COVID, I don't know.
Maybe that's partially. Yeah.
But it's been what a wild ride, right?
Yeah, and I haven't really divulged this. I'll give you a bit of an exclusive. So the guys that were doing this with me, we got to a point around we had agreed to certain features we're going to get out by the end of this year, and around September of this year, which is basically a year after the beta release, everybody kind of decided they couldn't do it anymore, except for me. Meanwhile, I'm not coding. Okay. And we're like over 1,500 interviews booked. We've got all this stuff going on. We've got an active Facebook community, but it's not revenue. It's not creating revenue. And it's like, okay, what do I do here? I don't even know what to do. So I went on the internet and I found a couple of places. I went on Reddit and I found this website called StartHawk, which is a site maybe sort of similar to ours, which connects people who can do development with people who have something they develop. And luckily for me, we had enough there that a lot of people were interested to jump on board and help. And we've actually brought in a couple of new guys who are doing this. Actually, one is from Minnesota living in Japan right now, Osaka, Japan. And one is from Latvia living in Portugal currently. And both of them are top tier guys in every sense of the word. And not to disparage anybody before, but I think, it just got to the point where it was just time. Luckily it was amicable and everybody was cool. But I think the net result is you're going to see a lot of improvements ever since they came on. Put it this way, Dimitri came on and 2 weeks later we had a homepage out we've been struggling to get out for a long time. And that was including him onboarding, getting the code base downloaded. I mean, everything. Just 100% ready to go. Right. So it's exciting to me. It's a little bit, it's bittersweet because I certainly love the guys I worked with before, but I get it, but at the same time, I want to see this baby come to life too. So
amazing. But what was right at potentially super crisis mode turned into be a super huge blessing.
Oh, I had a pity party for about 24 hours. Yeah,
I can't imagine what that 24 hours like. I'm probably a little bit more than just a pity party.
And probably a little bit more than 24 hours. But it was
moment of crisis.
There might have been some wine involved, and I mean, it's like, how do you, again, like with Digital Dads, how do you at this point with this thing and the Facebook community and everybody getting value out of this thing, but it's bleeding a little bit of money. How do you stop it? Like it just became, and so I was like, let me figure out what I can do.
Well, and more importantly than that, it's like, how do you ultimately make it profitable? And that's the biggest struggle with podcasting. I mean, podcasting is an amazing experience and everybody loves how it works. I love the product that they get out of it, but making it profitable or making it monetizable in a way that works for all parties involved, that nut's really tough to crack, without having done it for 5 or 10 years. It's like, how do you do it what do you do for those first 3 to 4 years that it takes to get to that point, assuming that even that it does at that point, it's, so let me ask you this for Poddit, what is the monetization game plan?
So I think we're going to really lean into moving toward being a lot like LinkedIn eventually, but for content creators. But for right now, what we're doing is we have two big buckets, right? Like everybody can come on there for free, obviously, both sides. And then on the guest side, for those that want to get higher visibility and they want to really make a better first impression, those two things. For example, on one of the page, you can add videos or past interviews as a guest, right? And so some percentage of them will want to pay the upgrade. Now, we just introduced a pro plan. So we were doing just a Rockstar plan as like $29 a month, and it's super premium because you get like featured on the homepage on a rotating basis. And I know for a fact it gives them more interviews. It just does, right?
Yeah. Well, you could see the results for themselves. I mean, it's all trackable.
Yeah, and you see them popping up and everything, but we wanted to make sure, because on Digital Dads we had people that were like, we had a pediatric emergency room physician who came on, and she wanted to give summer safety tips because she sees all these like drownings and stuff. I mean, so she wanted to come on our show. She doesn't get an ROI. She wouldn't necessarily be a candidate to pay for a platform, right? But her voice and her message was really valuable. So we wanted to make sure our platform enables that, but we need a strong enough monetized models, because without the monetized model, we can never deliver the product we want to deliver for everybody else. So it's a little tricky. Because you don't want to cash grab. Then again, the more revenue you're able to create, the more developers you can hire, the better you can make the product, the more design, all that stuff.
Yeah, so, it's all that cyclical effect.
Yeah. And so we introduced a pro plan though that's a lot more reasonable. I think it's well, if you do it annually, it's like $9 a month, and you get a lot of value for that.
Oh,
so
nice.
I think that's more in the range of like
amazing.
What people can digest, and we think they get a lot of value there. Particularly, we talked about the other new feature we had. You can use that at that level to send it out to podcasts outside of Poddit, and you're going to get that huge value just out of that. So, I mean, I feel like that's going to help us a lot in terms of covering costs and helping us grow. But we just released that today, so I can't prove that yet. It's not so different from the podcasting. I mean, you're trying stuff out. You're tweaking.
That makes perfect sense to me for like the entrepreneur or the author that has something that they want to get out there. I mean, literally for $9 a month, you're putting yourself out there to. I mean, you have your own little marketing company. That's allowing you the opportunity to interview with potentially hundreds of different podcasts and different platforms to share your message, to get your book out there, to get your message out there. So
right.
I think, you talk about an incredible value. I mean, bang for your buck. I think the biggest thing is just getting the word out, making sure everybody knows where to find you and how to get on board onto this platform. Because once they're there, I mean, for me personally, I can only speak to, I've had at least a half a dozen interviews come through Poddit, and they've all been just home runs, man. It's just been, I feel this is an opportunity for me to kind of show my rear end a little bit. Here I am booking the founder of this platform, and I used our buddy as a go-between.
But I love Walker, so it's all good. Not even an issue, man.
Shout out to Walker at the Walk Show, because
that's a good point though, Nate, because I think we talked about this a little bit before, but we realized that, as much as we want Poddit to become the de facto place, and I think it's important that there becomes a de facto place, because there's a lot of things that bleed out of that. Like, for example, right now, if somebody no-shows 15 times in a row, I saw somebody griping about that on Facebook the other day. Well, what are you going to do about it really though? I mean, there's not until everybody's in the same ecosystem, you can't have people can't say they're recommended. You can't have testimonials. Like, everybody kind of needs to live in that same ecosystem. And so, but until that happens, or even when that happens, because of niches and everything else, you're always going to find opportunities outside the platform. So our goal has and will always be to help every person on there get booked on more interviews, whether that means on Poddit or outside of Poddit. That's why I was telling you before, we created this brand new feature that's Pitch Page. It's basically like you create your profile, you put all your data in there, and you get another URL that strips off that left nav, and you can go send that to people. Or like, let's say you're on Facebook and somebody's like, well, I'm really looking for somebody like this. Instead of sending them to your website, which is probably geared towards something else and not like an interview per se, you shoot them that, they click a button, they see you on a video, they click a button, they listen to you, and they go, yeah. They see all your social media links, right? And they go, yeah, you would be a good fit. Just like that. That's the thing. You make it easier on them, they're going to be more likely to say yes to you, right? Well, and so that's all part of the deal.
Yeah, and not only that, but so a lot of the opportunities that I've received have come through different podcast Facebook groups, and a lot of those Facebook groups have all these different rules that you have to abide by. So a lot of them, you're not allowed to just post a link to your website. You're not allowed to just post something to your content, so having this link on Poddit allows you to then provide a link to them without violating those self-promotion rules. Will eventually get you kicked out of a group. So it's like, it's a beautiful, again, just filling that niche, man. It's just a beautiful thing.
Well, those Facebook admins, man, they get a little bit big for their britches, I think, but whatever, it's their group.
Well, I mean, and for what it's worth, I mean, usually if you're answering a question, like I've fulfilled I've given a lot of information, and in the process of doing so said, okay, here's something that specifically relates to the question that you're asking. They're pretty cool about that. But when you're just blatantly out there self-promoting or whatnot, but having something on Poddit, it gives you the opportunity to promote Poddit and then also kind of promote yourself at the same time as well.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And we stripped all that down on the page where it's basically just a logo at the top and the rest of it is like all of facing you. Right. So it's like, we really want it to be, here's a way for you to let them decide to say yes much easier than what most people typically have. Right. And I know this because as a host, and you may have seen this too, but on Digital Dads, we started getting like bad Word documents or PDFs. So one sheet with like just a whole bunch of text. And it was like, yeah, but that isn't, I don't know. You're just not putting you're not making a great first impression on me. And then I got to go chase you around the internet to try to find, I don't have time as a podcaster. I just don't have time. If you just sent me that link, like what we've just created, and I could click and listen to you, or I could click and listen, watch your video, or I could see all your social media links right there, and I could see testimony, like, and the that's everything I would want to see as a podcast host, and that's what we try to create. So that if I could say yes as a podcast host, then probably some other ones can too. And it's a work in progress. We're taking a lot of feedback too, and we'll tweak it as we go.
Well, I'll tell you, just the best part about it for me that just spoils us as podcast hosts completely rotten is when we get the request from the potential guests. Like I get, I've got a dozen or so requests, even though I've just got to go. I was going through them right before we jumped on for the interview, of where they're reaching out to us, and you get to see their little bio, you get to see their thing. You can see very quickly if it's an authentic thing or if it's just a kind of somebody just generically kind of just randomly posting everybody, whatnot. And I mean, it's a great, like, all I gotta do is just say, yeah, just a one click yes. And it's like, all of a sudden I get to respond to, and so it's an easy fit. It just basically took care of all of that scheduling legwork for me as a host and as a one-man show. Man, it's hard to beat that.
No doubt. Right. Yeah.
But, so let me ask you this. I always like to ask people what their favorite failure is, or a failure experience that they learned the most from. So going through the creation of Poddit and going from doing a podcast to now serving the podcasting industry, what was one of your favorite failures or one of your toughest experiences going through that process?
With respect to Poddit, definitely losing the team was tough.
Here recently.
Yeah, it was tough. From the standpoint of I didn't have anybody to create the code or to help with the product, but also there's relationships involved and friendships involved. So yeah, sure. It stung. That's definitely one of them. And with respect to, both really was, I think when you start podcasting, you have this expectation that you're going to, put on a podcast and everybody's going to come and listen and everything else. And, when we got the 10, I kind of glossed over it earlier. When you got the 10 downloads at first for a while, it didn't feel good. I actually did a podcast recently, separately with, I had a Poddit community already kind of built, or we did. And it translated into about 50 downloads an episode, which given the size of the community felt like a little bit of a slap across the face, but it's good because it's humbling, right? Because you sort of think, well, people are going to like what I have to say about this now. Not necessarily, right? And so you have to always be on your toes to make the best possible thing and temper your expectations and just take it as it comes and go forward. And I think I kind of had some unrealistic expectations. I didn't think it was going to be crazy. I just thought it would do better than it did. But you know what? That's on me. That obviously what I created either in the messaging or the actual content or something wasn't aligned with what I was trying to put out there, so, but I think that's part of it. And I like the way you phrased it, Nate, because you said your favorite failure. And I think in the traditional school system, you learn that failure is really, really bad. And I spent a lot of time teaching my kids that failure is just a part of the learning process. If you're out there doing something, stretching yourself to do something new and different, you're going to fail, or what they call fail. Because it's new and people don't just start off amazing at everything. It's just not the way things work. So I love that you phrase it like a favorite failure, because I think if you don't look at it as like, okay, what did I learn there and how could I be better? And, is this still important to me, or is it time to cut bait and try something else? Okay, fine. Maybe that was just a great experience for what it was, but maybe it's like, well, okay, I learned a bunch of ways that this didn't work, or, and same thing with the monetization with Poddit, or like the growth of Poddit, or all these things. We're taking constant feedback. We're taking all kinds of analytics. We're looking at it and going, is there something we're missing that could really make this work better for people, or what could we do? And you could look at it like a series of a lot of failures. We tried a lot of different things that just didn't pan out. We had a feature before that's gone. You'd never see it. It was a big part of the site at first. You launch in one other thing. When I first started it, I guess I kind of thought, wow, everybody's going to love this thing. Right. And ultimately I think they are starting to, but when you first launch what effectively is a network, it's not very valuable without very many people in it. And I didn't fully get that until, even with like 50, 100, it's just, there's only so many people that can match up. Right. And what's really neat to me today, we've actually highlight new connections, interview connections right there on the homepage. What's so cool to me is I'll sit there and refresh it because I love seeing them. Like, oh, I know that person and that person, and they just got connected. That's so cool. But there's enough people in there now that that's starting to actually, but it would have been very easy to look at that and go, yeah, it's not working, and get all down and then just let it go and quit. Right. I mean, it would have been, there's plenty of points along the way. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of points from here going forward that you could say, this is too hard. It is hard. It's really hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, for longer than I've ever done in my entire
scary.
life.
It's hard and scary, you know?
Yeah.
But it can be incredibly rewarding. And that, I think, is the coolest part about it, is the reward. Like, unfortunately, it's not a monetary reward just yet. I think that will come. But the reward that you get from seeing those connections being made and seeing, like, I love putting those right pieces together. It's like you're putting together a puzzle, and when the pieces fit perfectly, it's just a real thing of beauty when that happens.
Well, like you, like Walker, people in the community that I know that are getting some amazing conversations for their podcasts that probably would have never occurred with the platform not being there. Over 2,000.
Oh, without question.
And that's like a little surreal, and it is actually only scaled up, like it's accelerating. So, but the more people join, the more awesome connections are going to get made. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that real quickly, because I'm trying to create my little Facebook groups, and I'm trying to create my little community. And I am exactly where you were 2 years ago, where it's like how you first get that started organically. Like, what's that first customer? What's that first group member look like? What is that first person to sign up? And like, or the second and the third and like those first 10, the first 20. Oh, they're so hard to come by, and they're so valuable. And like, so with your business model, I mean, it's all based on a big network and having a big community. What was that like? How did you go about getting that first 10, that first 100, and getting the word out to the podcasters to let them know that you were out there? What did that look like?
So I was, again, a little bit in the community as it was, right?
Right, because of having, and just to make sure we said, Digital Dads is the podcast that you host. I don't know that we ever officially put it out
digital,
there.
Yeah, digitaldads.net, actually. I'm not trying to get downloads. But it's still hosted for people, because it's an example of, it's,
well, and it's amazing to listen to. I mean, it's worth going and checking out. There's plenty of episodes worth of content out there.
Yeah, 100 and something, 110, 100, something like that.
Yeah.
So we really love doing that. But yeah, so we had a little bit of connections, but not a lot, Nate. Honestly, it was light, man. And so,
because you're a niche. I mean, you're a dad niche podcast.
Right. So we weren't like steeped in I'm in the podcast space, kind of like as a business, but I knew a few people and went to a couple different events. And so I knew a handful, and then got on social media, started making some friendships, and went ahead and created the group and just started trying to funnel people to that group. Because
when you say group, it was a Facebook group?
Facebook group,
how you first started.
Yeah.
That was step one.
So, well, we had already started creating the product, but in terms of, as far as anybody else
community.
Yeah, the Facebook group, we created that. And then what we did was we started talking to just people and putting them in there, because there was a couple other Facebook groups to connect podcasting guests, right? And so we said, well, even though Poddit doesn't really fully exist yet, we might as well have them doing that here. And I always like try to keep it along that, but I mean, if it's a PR person or if it's whoever, I don't care. We're just trying to help people connect for podcast interviews. In fact, one of my earlier co-founders, he was like, no, you got to push them to Poddit off of the Facebook group. I'm like, no, we need to solve their pain point. And right now, if they can do that easier on the Facebook group, then that's fine. Because if they'll decide when they're ready, or if they're ready, and as the product matures, that'll be more likely. But you never want to like dictate that, right? We need to earn that. That was always my approach.
You're creating loyalty.
Yeah, we felt like, well, again, it felt like that's more of a me-centric type of approach, trying to push them to Poddit, whereas the approach is, I'm going to push you to Poddit just as soon as I feel like it's completely in your best interest and this is the best possible way. Then, yeah, I'm going to strongly encourage you to go do that, but because I know it's the best thing for you. But
I'm going to push you to where the answer to your problems lie.
Yeah.
Wherever that may be.
And if it's on Facebook, well, then great. At least we've still got your attention. And if we can ever get to that point, this was early on, then there'll be much better chance you'll go check out Poddit. And honestly, if you don't, then fine, stay in the Facebook group, get the value. It's fine. It doesn't matter, right? Because it still adds to the overall value of everybody there, which is what we're trying to do. So it started to grow. And then we went to MapCon, and Joe had about 60 people there. And so most of them joined our Facebook group. And that was where we really went from like 0 people on the platform to, most of them. And, then we went to She Podcast. We attended that as a sponsor. And,
nice.
and we met a lot of really cool female entrepreneurs there, which was really, it was neat to be able to sort of be part of it without kind of being obtrusive or, in the way.
Right.
And they were
kicked
really
out. You're not a female.
Yeah. What are you doing? No, I mean, there was some guys that attended, but it was kind of their deal, and it was really interesting. And so we got more traction there, and the Facebook group was starting to pick up a lot of steam just because it's a Facebook group. And I guess I try to inject my personality in there as much as I can and just be authentic and stuff and try to be funny. It doesn't always hit, but just, again, remember we were saying like, being my authentic self.
Yeah. Keep swinging.
Yeah. And it just started growing. And, we really started to get a lot of traction. Like you said, around the time, a little bit before COVID, we went to Podfest and we started getting the platform kind of nailed down a little bit, and we're figuring some stuff out. And, and it started to take off. And then, I mean, now Facebook group since COVID is like shot up. We're over 3,000 something now. I don't know.
Amazing.
Something like that. But it's and then the platform shot up to like 2,400 now too. So and what's neat about that is like 600 something podcasts. What's neat about that is all those podcasts are there because they want guests. It's not, we didn't go grab all the podcasts out there and shove them in the platform and then you don't know. No, these are people that
they
want
came
guests.
to you. Yeah. They came to you looking for guests. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Right. Cause then I feel confident that if you go there, you have a decent chance of getting a guest. So it's interesting. I can give you some statistics. So podcasts reaching out to guests get about a 60% acceptance rate across the board. That's a pretty good close rate on getting a guest on the show.
I was gonna say, I don't know if mine's that good, to be honest with you.
It depends, right? I mean, it just depends. And some of them
that depends on if you know them before ahead of time or not, right?
That could be, and also we're trying to. There's some things we want to do to clean up and make sure people that are not active start to be, go away because that influences statistics and stuff. And then on the other side, though, getting on shows, the podcasters accept about 34%. Which is actually
this is on Poddit you're talking
on Poddit.
About. Oh, on Poddit. Amazing. Oh, yeah. Well, in that case, I've actually got higher on Poddit. I was talking about just overall.
No, that's
overall,
my point, though.
I'm not swinging that well, but
but that's my point. Is like, I think that's what people like is that the community is really connecting people that are, and so we're starting to see, because we built, and to your point about the community, we purposefully kind of organically, but we built this community of like good people connecting with good people, right? And so those translated over to the network, and all of a sudden what we seeded the network with started to really give us an edge because they were kind of a little bit already pre-validated a little bit, right? I didn't really strategically do that, but it just kind of worked that way. So now we're seeing the statistics and the quality of the interviews and the people that they're sharing it with tend to be above board. We're always going to have people filter in because, it's free, but across the board, I feel really confident about it. And I think largely the community from Facebook was a big part of the reason why that's starting to have an effect on the site.
Yeah, well, I could tell you personally, because again, I'm on a lot of those Facebook groups and I'm also on Poddit, and the quality that you get, I mean, that's what's always been the game changer for me with Poddit compared to any of those others. Any Facebook group, I always have to go do some digging before I accept, like,
Yeah.
whoa, wait a second, hold on. But with Poddit, number one, it's the bio's right there for me, so I know within 30 seconds if it's a fit or not. And then two, 9 times out of 10 it is. I mean, just the quality has been phenomenal for me personally.
Well, that's the thing on Facebook, right? You get the pictures of their cat or, their last trip to Disney, or, I mean, not necessarily relevant to what you're looking for. So it's a little tricky to chase it down, but.
Or they're like from Croatia and they just barely speak English, and, like some of that. Yeah. Like
there are those.
I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. Like I just interviewed a dude from Cameroon,
cool.
and he was a fascinating story. I don't think I found him on Poddit though, but he's actually a really, really neat guy. So I don't discount anybody based on where they're from.
No.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. So I'm curious. So you have a podcast about digital dads, or you had that podcast, and me being a father of 5, we're living in that dad world, and this podcasting space has provided some learning opportunities for me with my kids and stuff. And with you, especially, like you've had your kids as a part of the show. I mean, they're very much involved with that. So what has been the biggest thing that you feel like that they have learned from your podcasting journey?
I think they learned that their voice can matter to people, right? That it can be bigger than just the one-to-one, that they have a platform in the world of podcasting or YouTube or whatever else that, and I mean, they're kids, so for a while there, they wanted to do YouTube videos that were kind of just cheesy or whatever. But I think that they've started to realize that a lot of what we did mattered. It mattered to a number of people. Again, not some huge audience, but enough people. It's like kind of surreal to me. And I mean, Nate, we had, I don't want to brag, but we had, when it's really not us, it was like a lot of the guests we had on, but like we had guys emailing us from the delivery room telling us they felt more ready to be a dad because they listened to our podcast. Can you imagine how like humbling and just kind of like, no, dude, that's not, I'm not that guy. I'm just trying to do a little bit better than what I did before. I'm as messed up as anybody else. I promise you that. We're just trying to bring things to you that might help you be a little bit better and help your kids be a little bit better in some meaningful way. And we're glad to be able to do that. And I think my kids have been able to see that in certain ways. People have sent me stuff. It's just, it's crazy that you can connect with people that you don't know and impact their life for that little small window of time. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's without a doubt been the most impactful aspect of it for me that I did not really expect. I mean, I to be honest with you, I don't know what I expected, but to have those little things, like little connections like that would not have happened if the podcast didn't exist. So like for me, I did an interview with a gal who had her daughter has Angelman syndrome. And she had another professional athlete connect with her because that professional athlete's daughter was born with the same genetic disorder, and now they've like connected on Instagram, and they're doing this big thing and this big charity event. They're gonna go solve the disease, like that's their mission now. And it was all because he happened to hear her on my podcast, and it was like, and this was at the earlier stages where not that I still have a long ways to go as it is, but it wasn't a super big popular episode. It didn't get out there. It wasn't like there were these huge numbers out there, but it made this little impact. I had 2 of my guests, one that is a winemaker and one that has a charity, and they connected. I didn't have anything to do with it. They connected on their own. Like they just went out of their way to link up with one another and did this little event. And one dude sold a whole lot of wine. The other guy got a big fat check for his charity. Nice. So it was like, wow, like, again, it was
win-win.
Like all those cool little, and then my podcast would not have even started if it wasn't for another one of those weird little connections like that. So it's been fascinating.
They say you never know who's listening, and it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. And you don't know how it's going to impact them, man. It matters.
Well, just me going to Podfest was this crazy, weird set of circumstances. And the list of people like you and Walker and Pablo and all these guys that came out as a result of going on that trip, man, it's literally changed my life, and it's changed my path, my trajectory. I'm headed in a different direction now that would not be if it weren't for all that. So now I'm like all this ideas about how I want to do another Podfest and create that next level of stuff like that. So
oh yeah,
oh man, like big plans for sure.
Big endeavors, dude.
How about morning routines, morning habits? I'm assuming being a dad, you're a morning guy. Would that be a safe assumption?
So I don't I don't prefer to be, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's not
you're a programmer too, though. Like a computer guy.
I'm the late night kind of person, but
owls.
but that catches me coming and going sometimes, Nate, because I'll be up late a lot of times for whatever, and then next thing you know, I am up early whether I like it or not, because school's gonna happen, work's gonna happen, breakfast, all the things, right? On a good day, I'll try to exercise first in the morning. I'll get up a little bit earlier, and with COVID, I hadn't been going to the gym, but I mean, some bands or some just push-ups and stuff like that. But
you consider yourself a night owl at the end of the day, though.
I much prefer, if I didn't have to wake up super early,
right.
I'd be up till 2, 3, 4 a.m. just kind of, because I think with the kids, it's just easier for me to get that space, because a lot of the stuff I'm trying to work on really requires a lot of deep thought. I don't like to be short with them if I get interrupted and stuff. So, and I've gotten pretty good at not doing that, but still it's hard to get back your train of thought and stuff like that. Yeah. So nighttime works better for me.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way. I just happen to I'll literally get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have that same quiet space. I think having that quiet space, having that quiet time is critically important wherever you find it. You carve it out wherever you can get it, but having it, I think, is an incredibly important part of your daily routine.
Yeah, it makes you a better dad, better husband, all of the things, better podcaster,
If you still had your podcast, who would you like to have as a guest on your show? Or who would have been an ideal guest for you?
I loved, he's not really a dad and he's not really tech, but I love Seth Godin. He just, the way he sort of views the world, the way he communicates about the world and culture, and is just super inquisitive, and he doesn't do it in a judgmental kind of a way. He's just like, I just feel like I could just become smarter by just being around him and his presence. He's a fascinating individual.
One of those guys, like, you just want to be his friend, like, be your buddy.
he just sees the world so uniquely, and it'd be neat to kind of hang with him and get to chat on a podcast. He'd be near the top of the list. He's passed. I would like to also talk to Steve Jobs, just because I think he's an interesting. I'd love to see what his thoughts are on what he gave up with respect to his family. And then also the impact he had, and like, just, there's a lot to unpack with him if I would have had the chance to talk to him.
Nice. I like that kind of addressing some of that lifestyle design stuff. That's such a big theme for me and our show. Yeah.
And he was kind of known for, maybe not being the best dad and stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, he was a bit of a taskmaster for sure. Like, not just at home, but like, on the job too. I mean, a lot of those same characteristics came through on both sides of the coin there.
It's interesting. It's interesting too, Nate, because a lot of those guys, Bill Gates and a lot of those guys who are around tech all the time, are the ones who are least likely to let their kids have devices.
Oh yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard none of them let their kids have any of those electronics, Facebook, or any of those guys. So based on that, who do you think would be good for this show, since how we are kind of about that lifestyle design and some of that kind of stuff?
So like someone we could actually get on, or someone that's
give me one of each. Name. Give me a fantasy guy, and then maybe one that's even off of Poddit that you think would be.
I'd love to see you chop it up with Gary Vaynerchuk, just because I'd love to just
both, brother.
Yeah, I just love to see that sort of energy transfer back and forth, and I think a lot of knowledge would be gained too, both sides.
He's so smart.
He just brings a lot of enthusiasm. So I'd love to see that for sure for you. More wheelhouse. I don't know, man. There's a lot of people on the platform that I know personally. Joe Pardo, Eric Hunley, Lara Roberts, Samantha Riley. There's Amy Joshua. There's some different people, depending on what your angle was, but any one of them.
I'm so glad we're recording this, because I'm going down the list right there. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, man. There's a number of close friends that I know. I've listened to them on different shows, and they're just great. They're just great. Amazing. Great people, great insights, good energy, good sense of humor, all the things, check all the boxes. So
Nice. So you're having to shift gears a little bit now with the change in the guard a little bit with Poddit. How are you learning your information? How are you continuing to learn as you go? Where do you go for learning content?
So I'm an avid reader.
Nice.
So I'm always reading, mostly 99% nonfiction, although I did listen to Ready Player One back before it became a movie and stuff like that. But
great book, horrible movie.
Yeah. So the Ready Player Two is coming out November this month, I think.
I heard about it, but I was so disappointed in Ready Player One, the movie. I'm disheartened by the entire process at this point.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a John Hughes freak, but I digress.
Well, right, yeah. But so 99% of the books I read though are more nonfiction, and so I read a lot of resources on the internet in terms of, I like the more psychological aspects of building a product. Like, obviously you're building value, but like there's a book called Contagious, which is like how things spread. Amazing book.
Is that Crichton?
No, it's Jonah Berger. It's this is a no. I think you're thinking of a fiction book. No, this is like how things spread via word of mouth. Really good. That stuff. And then one of my new colleagues was really heavy into making sure we go down and get a lot of analytics. So, and one of the things I've been doing lately is a lot of customer outreach or user outreach or member outreach, whatever you want to call it. And so I've done a lot of one-on-one calls like this with a list of questions, trying to get their feedback about how can we make this better for you? How can we solve this pain point for you? Is this valuable? Talking about the monetization piece, but not in a sales kind of way, just kind of like what's worth paying for you, what pain points do you have, and trying to figure out
where will you find the value. Yeah.
So we can solve this for everybody. So it's a lot of that. It's like a do all that and then repeat, right? So you're like, the reading is continual. The learning from different sources is continual. Podcasts, etc. A lot of podcasts do. A lot of Seth Godin, actually, Akimbo and Startup School and various ones from him. Purple Cow. Just love all that stuff and fascinated. And then, putting it into practice and seeing how it resonates with people.
Nice. How do you read your books? Are you old school hard copy? Do you do audio books? Are you ebooks? How do you like to read them?
Do both. I do actually find myself lately I like the visceral read in bed before, with the physical paper copy. Been doing a lot of that lately. But yeah, I'll listen to audiobooks too. Used to be on the commute a lot. It's a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks, but now you can multitask with that. So that's kind of nice, right? Like if you're cleaning or if you're exercising, whatever, that's the nice thing. You can double up, especially as a dad. So definitely do a lot of that, but yeah, I do try to read, 20, 30 minutes a night, physical book.
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't like Audible because it only gives you one a month. So I'll look for free books on audio on YouTube and stuff like that, and audio content. I'm consuming a lot of podcasts, but then I'm old school paper guy. I'm an old guy anyway, so it's right in my wheelhouse. But I've been over my journey, I've just been really gotten focused back into doing a ton of reading, and it's been so rewarding. And I just realize how much I've missed it. And I'm just dead set on keeping it as a vital part of my life from here on out. Having that learning mentality is it's the only way to live, man.
I don't think most people realize just how different it's like awakening parts of you. I don't want to say different, right? Because you're still the same, but you just getting the benefit of somebody else's knowledge and wisdom that they took the time and their whole life sometimes to condense down and bring to you and present to you in a way that can impact you earlier. And then you do that again and again and again over a period of a few years. I think it does make you different. I think it does.
Yeah,
it does. It does. It is the difference maker. It is absolutely the difference maker.
It is difference. Beautiful.
No doubt about it. And anybody who doesn't think so doesn't read.
Because
there's no way you can read and learn like that and not realize how just interesting everything is.
Right. And how much of it we're repeating. Well, and what's interesting is that you see a lot of the behaviors going on. You realize how little reading is going on. But I digress. So
true story.
Brent, man, we have blown through an hour like it was just we were standing still. Thank you so much for your time
and it's been my honor
for what you're doing, man. I'm so thrilled about Poddit and the progress that you're making and where it's going. Other than Poddit, where do you want people to find you or more information about you or anything like that? Or and obviously let them know how to get to Poddit as well. That's pretty straightforward. But.
Yeah, I mean Poddit.net if they want to check
Official
that out. They
plug.
can go, yeah, but they can go on the Facebook group too, and I think it's we have a lot of fun in there too. You just search for it, or if you want to connect with me on Twitter at Brent Bash, BrentBash, and I just like connecting with folks, man. So I mean, if you want to shoot me a line, please do. And if I can help you in any way, anything that I've learned, I'm happy to try to point you. Whether you're on the platform or not, doesn't really matter. You know, it's I just try to help.
Poddit. Oh, and then the other thing that I'd like to do is, other than plugging yourself, is there a charity or organization that you work with that you would like to promote or share any information about?
No, you know, man, I will point you to a podcast that's not specifically a charity. But Matthew Passy has a podcast called Cause Pods, CAUSEPODS, and he highlights a lot of different charities, which is probably the best shout out I can give because you can find one that connects with you. And Matthew is a great dude. So you cannot go wrong checking out that show and just getting to hear from people and the different things. There's so many. And and then find one that suits you and contribute in some meaningful way.
Ah, that's a beautiful answer, man. Yeah, I had no idea. I've never even heard of that before. I'll have to provide a link to his show in the show notes as well. That's amazing. All right, so I'm gonna let you go. But before we do, there's two questions I'd like to wrap up with. First one's easy, but meaningful. The second one's hard, but really stupid. So good little mix. But First one, if you had a billboard for all the world to see, what would you put on it? What's your message that you'd like to share with the world? And then the last question is, what's your favorite item under $100 that you use on an everyday basis you could not live without?
So I think you're going to think this is hokey. Probably
they're all hokey
for the billboard, right? Yeah, but for other people, because probably the thing that's means the most to me in life is my children, which I think is probably obviously pretty evident by now. But I think I would put. It's already kind of been out there. When I watched the movie The Matrix, I came out of the theater and looked around at the world and was just sort of taken aback at reality. And so I'll probably put just that scene of him when he holds his hand up and he realizes in that moment that it's not real. Like what we think is real is not real, and what's real is not what we think it is. And just this sort of taken out of the reality of our senses in that moment. And just that frame of that picture, because if you get it, you get it. And if you don't get it, it's just going to look like a dude holding his hand up. But I think that no words, no nothing, just that image, you know, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Amazing. I love that. You're the first person to have something that wasn't a saying or a slogan or something like that. That's a really great answer.
I like to, you know, infer things. I like to pull meaning out of things. And so I'd like for somebody else to pull the meaning out.
For themselves. Yeah.
Let them pull it out for themselves. Cause I think that's how it impacts you. Right. And Lord knows we've seen enough words on social media and otherwise already.
On a podcast.
So less than $100, man, I'll go, I think less than $10, which is these cheapo. I don't even have, they're just cheapo earbuds. They're Panasonic cheapo earbuds. And the reason why I go with the cheap ones, I've tried a couple times trying to use various earbuds. I never got the iPod Pros or whatever at the gym. This is back when I was going to the gym a lot. And I would always have a problem with them falling out or whatever else. My phone would fall out of my pocket because it's not connected to the wire. And because the gym pants. Anyway, long story short, these things have been amazing. And when they die, because they do after a year or so, I buy another $10 pair and it's
get another year out of them. Yeah.
They fit in my ears. I don't worry about them. It's just the cheapest thing. But now at home, when I'm on a computer or something like that, or doing audio, I'll have like a better pair for like listening to music or whatever else. But just as I'm telling you, man, I couldn't live without these things.
The day-to-day users.
Without them.
Yeah,
all the time.
That's amazing. That's perfect. Well, we've had other people talk about earbuds, but no one, or some type of listening, you know, earphones or whatever, but not ever with the cheap little That's beautiful, because I go through several pair. Working out the way that I do, I burn through several pair a year as it is. So if I could find some $10 ones, I'm gonna have to check them out.
That's why I did it, right? Because and they fit my ears too. Because the early Apple ones I tried that came with the phones.
Oh, I hate them.
They wouldn't. Oh, it's terrible. I don't even know what they were thinking. They're all big about design, and then those things are rigid. I don't understand. Anyway.
I must have weird ears too, because they've never worked with me. But I've never been compatible with anything that Apple does.
Same.
Same. Like the earbuds were just par for the course, man.
Same.
Awesome. Brent, thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for Poddit and the opportunity to have a platform that makes my job so much easier. So incredibly grateful. And I will continue to promote you guys and put it out there. And we'll have to do it again in person next time real soon.
Oh, yeah.
Since I was so
Thanks
close.
for the opportunity, Nate. And take care of them kids you got, buddy. That's you got a handful.
Yeah, you too, my man. You too. Take care. So you're still here. Wow. Thanks for sticking around. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? What would you like to know more about? Who would you like to hear on the show? If you stuck around this long, maybe you won't mind giving me some feedback. And don't forget to check out the website, extraordinarypodcast.net, for all the latest episodes. And if you enjoyed the show, please take the time to share with your friends, on social media, or with anyone you think who might enjoy it. And last but not least, if you're ready to start living an extraordinary life, check out 8keystogreat.com, where you can craft your free blueprint to renovate your career, home, or lifestyle. The program is free, but you have to do the work to unlock each key. And finally, if you'd like to speak with me directly, you can book a free 30-minute Zoom call directly through my Calendly link on the contacts page. And in the meantime, check out some of the other exciting interviews with ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thanks for listening, thanks for sharing, and most of all, thanks for just being you. I'm Nate G, and we'll see you next week.